So now let's talk about a reinforcer. We've been talking about positive reinforcement. A reinforcer is an item, activity, person that is motivating. So if the student really likes their chosen reinforcer, they're much more likely to respond to you in a positive way. And you'll be able to tell if they don't like their item or if they don't consider it reinforcing. They're less likely to do the activity or task that you've asked them to do. So let's look at this image on the screen. There's a little girl, there's a lady, and they are playing with toys. So perhaps the child finds the toy motivating. Perhaps the child finds the adult attention and interaction that she's getting motivating, or perhaps it's both. It could be both. So let's look at some examples of reinforcers. And this is a small list of examples. There are many, many reinforcers out there, and sometimes it's not what you expect. So we have toys. Any variety of toy could be a reinforcer. You could have candy. It doesn't have to be candy. It could be a goldfish cracker or any kind of savory item. I had a student once that was motivated by yogurt. It could be juice or any variety of drink. It could be adult attention. It might be a specific adult, or perhaps they don't care, it's any adult. Same with peers. Sometimes it's a specific peer, or sometimes it's any peer that's around. They're cool with that. Electronics are a big hit. Everyone likes an iPad. Not everyone, but most kids like an iPad and some variety of game or activity on the iPad. And then you have activities. Now, sometimes those will overlap with electronics or toys. We have swinging here and then playing a video game. So these are just a few examples. How will you choose a reinforcer for your student? So it's important to remember that finding reinforcers is about what the student finds reinforcing and not what the adult finds reinforcing. So if you pick something that you think they might like because every other kid in your class likes it, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work. They have to like it enough to be willing to work for it to serve as a reinforcer. So we have a few ideas of how you can discover those reinforcers. You can do an interview or a checklist, observations, and there are trial-based methods. And we have friends at the Arkansas Behavior Support Specialist. They also have videos that are helpful with the topics of reinforcement and preference assessments. So if you look in our resources, there's a link in the videos that we think would be helpful concerning positive reinforcement. These are all preference assessments. So let's look at some different options for you. So you'll notice that I call these preference assessments, even though some of these titles say reinforcer. We use the term preference because we will not know if the item's actually reinforcing until we see the student working for it or not working for it to know if it's going to be a reinforcer. So that's why we use the term preference, and you might see reinforcer on some of these. That's okay. We did not create these resources. We aggregated them from other highly reputable and really helpful websites, but they're all linked on this document. If you go into our resources, you'll be able to find this slide and the next slide, and all of the links are hyperdoc. It's a hyperdoc. The links are live. You can click them and go to the document. If there is a video button, that means there are video examples that you can click on and go watch on YouTube. So most teachers begin with observations or perhaps an interview. Many teachers will send home a form at the beginning of the school year and ask parents to help. And then while they're waiting, they'll do observations, or maybe they do some of these forms on their own. So these really are going to help you narrow down what type of item your student might prefer. Some of these can be used as an observation or an interview. Some of these can be used as self-report if the student's capable of doing a self-report document. The point is that these are all great ways to gather information on what your student might like. If you see that it says it's an interview, but you send it home in the backpack and the parent fills it out and sends it back, so you didn't actually interview them, that's okay. You're still getting ideas of what your student might like. Most of these have directions of how to use them on the top when you click on the link, so you'll have all of that information. And then the key here that I want to talk about is that sometimes you will get assessments back from parents and it will say like, oh, well, he likes everything. Like there's nothing he doesn't like. Or you'll get an assessment back and they'll say, well, he doesn't like anything. There's like, I can't find anything that he'll work for, or they list one item. Well, first, everyone has reinforcers, so we don't give up there. Sometimes it takes more work to discover them. Sometimes it is something that you would never dream of being a reinforcer for someone, and that's okay. If it's motivating to them and it's socially appropriate and, you know, it's not something that's inappropriate to have at school, let them work for it. Both of those responses, they like everything, they don't like anything, or only one thing, they make it a little bit difficult to move forward knowing what to use with the student. So if that happens, we have some more structured methods on the next slide that I want to talk about. Another thing you can do is, before you start your work session, do a quick check. If you have their choice board and they do not want anything on the choice board, then it's time to stop, drop, and assess. So gather some other items, let them interact with them for a few minutes, see if there's anything that they're interested in. If there is something, that's awesome, use that item. And then you can start adding it into their reinforcer choice board, and you're expanding their reinforcers. If they don't like anything, put those down, go get another round and bring it over and try some more. I make it super fun and engaging, let them interact and keep trying new things. The big point is, don't give up. Everyone has a reinforcer. Okay, so now we have some more structured preference assessments. These are fantastic because they will create a hierarchy of their most to least preferred items. You want to make this a super fun activity for them. We have video examples for all of them, and you can go watch before you get started, but make sure that they have time to play with the items before you start the actual trials, and they get a sense of like what the toy does, and, you know, get some interest in it before you start. The first option is a single stimulus preference assessment. This would be good for a student that cannot choose between two items. So that could be that they only scan, they don't scan. They look at one item and they don't move their head to look at anything else. Or perhaps they always choose the item on the left, or they always choose the item on the right. You don't know if they really like it or if they're just choosing it because it's in that spot. So if the student has those characteristics, the single stimulus would be a great choice to start with. If a student can scan two items and they can select between two items, a paired stimulus would be a great choice because it's two items at a time. A multiple stimulus with replacement means that you're going to put the item back every trial. So it's always going to be a field of 6 if you're doing 6 items. You would use this if a student can scan multiple items up to 6, if they can select between those multiple items, but when you take one of the items out, they have challenging behavior. So you want to keep putting those 6 items in. That's what with replacement means. And so that would be your go-to if they have challenging behavior during a preference assessment. And then our last option is the most efficient. It is multiple stimulus without replacement. So you might start with the field of 6. When you do your first trial and you take one out, the next trial, you have a field of 5 and so forth. So if your student can scan 6 items, if they can select between them, and they do not engage in any challenging behavior when the toys are removed, this is the quickest and most efficient method to get your hierarchy.